Hello everybody and welcome back to KXP. I'm pretty excited about today's episode after reviewing the footage from the KXP POV crowd. Seeing them push forward and fly by the Mun really lit a fire under us, and today, as you can tell probably by the title, we are going to do just that. We do have a couple contracts that were mainly just to achieve the part, and sadly we are going to cancel them, the small stack decoupler and the Spacely liquid fuel engine, because we do actually have access to better parts than that for now, and unfortunately we will take a little bit of a reputation loss as well as a little bit of funding, but it's worthwhile in order to take these more advanced contracts like exploring the Mun, because that will net us a lot more, and we only have a limited slots available to accept contracts. So sorry Gene, I hate to do it, but we will make up for it with the added reputation and funds from doing such a thing, such as flyby Mun mission. We are going to do it with a probe, however. We are less willing to risk our Kerbals' lives in the sake of advancement of the milestones. However, POV has some significant challenges that comes with their new KSP location, but nonetheless, let's get back into this. We are grabbing all the contracts that we can, anything relevant to the Mun, and hopefully we can achieve a few of those in a single jaunt. The first thing we're going to want to do is get ourselves a probe core. Now, first off, I start loading it up with ScanSat materials in order to get a map of the thing, forgetting that we're not going for an orbit just yet. We're just going to go for a flyby. We want to collect all the science that we can from that area with every experiment that we have available. And we want to learn from the mistakes of the POV crowd, and we want to make sure that we get our science back from this. They took a major loss by not getting the science, and so that is of utmost importance for us in today's mission. So we have this little service bay that we can pack tightly with it, as well as a science collecting unit. We're going to put 2 of the science juniors on there, as well as 2 of each experiment, so we can get the space in high and low above the Mun. We don't have access to high quality communication, so there is a chance that we will end up losing probe control as we get farther away from Kerbin, or when we enter the dark side of the Mun. So we're going to put the best communications that we have available, and then we're going to, as you may have noted from the title of this video, we are going to rely on the flight computer provided by Remote Tech. As you see here, I went and added the real shoot mod. Apparently I had forgotten to add it in the beginning, but we went ahead and did that, so that way we have access to arming our parachutes via the action group set. So that's going to be very important. I could have it where it's just on the stage and that's how it is typically, but I really do prefer to have it where I can just arm it, make it part of the descent action group where my service bay doors toggle closed, if I have solar panels that retract, those retract, and the parachute is armed and ready, so that way once we hit that descent action group, everything is good to go and we can just let it handle itself automatically. So it's good to have that mod back in place. So now we are just setting those parachutes so they can deploy at the appropriate altitude for the given weight, because this is all that we're going to be taking home. And then once we have that, we can start putting the rocket in order. So we will be needing to have enough delta V to just do a flyby and then return. I don't want to have too elliptical of an orbit. I want to come in safely. Obviously, returning the vessel is the top priority here. So now we are working on the tanks that will get us not only to orbit, but to the Mun and back. This may not need to get us to orbit. We may be able to achieve it with our gigantic lower stage, as we've been enjoying the Tundra lifting vehicle. It is a bit overkill. It can get us to orbit with very little problem on its own. It's essentially an SSTO. But we're going to put a probe core, some solar panels, reaction wheels, the best ones we have anyways, and then some parachutes, because I'd like to return this, the cost of this anyways, when we finish the mission. I'd like to have that show up on the stage recovery mod as recovered. But anyways, that was a successful test. We do need to have communication if we want to control it, though, however. Once we separated it from the upper stage, it was dead in the water. But now, all we need to do is tuck this all up into a fairing. We don't technically even need to tuck into a fairing. It was relatively stable and aerodynamic on its own, but just for the sake of looks, I decided to spend some time on getting the pieces safely stowed away and tucked in neatly into that fairing. Throw in an extra battery on there so we can attach the solar panels. Make sure that the action groups are the same. And then go ahead once more trying to get the fairing done. But then I remember I have these reaction wheels on there. But with nothing left to stop us, we're just going to get this tucked in. I cannot wait till we get a wider fairing base. But for now, that will do. But we are actually going to take off the probe core, the parachutes, the communication dishes. We're going to take off all of that because we don't need to recover the funds from this. It's actually going to push us towards the Mun, and I'd rather have some of that fuel in there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put some separatrons on there to get it away from the main body of the probe, and then we have explosives to take care of it so we don't have to deal with space debris. But with 4,348 delta V in atmosphere, that is more than enough to get ourselves to orbit and a lunar flyby and return home. We actually possibly could even orbit with this machine, but we're not going to jump farther ahead than we need to. And given that we're not going to be tucking it into a fairing anymore, we're going to go ahead and put those pieces back out on the side and shorten up our probe once again. After making sure our staging is correct, we are going to do another test to make sure that it's running correctly. And then before we get into our launch, we're going to come into the administration building and activate the Mun probe strategy. And that means that in order to complete this, we're going to have to land probes in 3 different biomes on the Mun, not a crewed vessel. We can't bring Kerbals there before we complete this. So while the POV group is doing the Mun program, because they can do a Kerbal in there, which is going to be significantly harder, we are going to take advantage of the fact that we can use these probes to land in different areas. We have a lot more freedom of control with it, and we will get a lot more science than they will by landing in 3 different biomes and producing the science from that. So we're going to take a quick second before we launch our flyby probe, and we're going to build out our landing probe. I feel pretty confident in the technology that we have currently that we would be able to travel to orbit and land on the Mun with such a device like this. We may even be able to get ourselves back. However, we're just going to build the basics of this and then change it around later, because once we get our flyby probe back, we will have a significant amount of science, so we're going to be able to upgrade it significantly. On this one, I want to focus heavily on just the returning of the science regardless of the cost of it. So we are going to put our heat shield directly below our science collection unit, and that will lighten our load when we come in for re-entry, allowing us to have a very high apoapsis, a very elliptical orbit, and come in at a very steep angle. So pretty happy with this. We are going to just make it a small little thing, a couple landing legs, just the second smallest that we've got. We're going to make sure that they're low enough so that we don't bang our engine bell. and then turn them gold, because why not? We are going to need to have some lights, some reaction wheels. We're going to need to have all sorts of pieces to this that we're going to add as we go along and later. But for now, we are building the transfer stage. This is going to get us from orbit to the Mun, and potentially a little bit of our landing fuel will be utilized in that stage. We're getting our Communitron 16 on there. We are going to, as we test it, we're going to need to have that extended because the simulation will not allow us to control a probe if we don't have control of it to begin with. We have these two high gain antennas to make sure to have control that far out from Kerbin. So we will actually be upgrading those communication dishes a little bit later, so don't worry about that. I'm going to go ahead and get everything on my action groups, get that all situated. We are going to make several tests of this to make sure that it can land. When I say that we do tests, that is from the Crash mod, Kerbal ramification something system something found in CCAN, and as per always, you can find the list of my mods in the description below. A link to the Google Doc that has that, and if you're curious on what kind of mods we use in our series. But in short, that mod allows us to run the mission from start to finish, or from orbit, from any part that we have unlocked. Anyways, we can't just orbit Duna if we've never even flown by it. So yeah, it gives you some limitations, and it does cost money. Our funds will go down given the amount of testing. I tried to limit the cost of it, but yeah, it's important to do test every step of the way if you can, to really make sure that your mission goes off without a hitch. And that's the best way to live with your consequences, is the fact of, like, well, if you've tested it over and over and over again and it still fails, then, well, maybe it was destined to fail. Maybe you should just take the failure, learn from it, and go on. But without the testing mod, you could very well be like, oh, well, I wasn't prepared for, X, Y, and Z, so therefore we can just, revert to the launch, revert to the VAB, fix it, and then put it back out again. So basically we're doing that, but in a simulated environment. It also means that if we achieve any milestones or do anything like that, it doesn't actually count when we finish the simulation. But even though this is KXP, I'm throwing a couple cameras on there. I think it might be nice to get a couple shots for posterity of interesting things to see on the Mun. It will be the first landing, and after all, we are going to need to send a shot in the newspaper that we deliver to the POV group. Anyways, after checking my stages, making sure it's fine, I realized I don't actually need the explosives on the lower stage, because it will end up coming back home on its own anyways. We are going to throw some flags on here since we have the ability to. The flag mod is also listed in the description below. It's always put myself on the spot. Minimalist Kerbal system flags for everybody is the name of it, and that's what it is. It's just this nice little minimalist look at all the different celestial bodies in the Kerbal system. I'm putting some info logs on there. We have a mod that can keep track of certain events that happen during our flight, and it's good to see if anything goes wrong. We can kind of take an in-depth look and see what happened. Putting in some launch stabilizers because I don't want this thing tipping over before we get the opportunity to fire. Once again, we are going to put probe control on here because after the last simulation we did end up having enough fuel to return ourselves. So we're going to once again put the probe control on there, put the communications. We don't need solar panels because we're not going to be in space long enough, and we should have enough battery. And with all that said and done, nothing left to do but launch our rockets. Starting with the flyby, we are going to take off and kind of speed through the intro of getting ourselves to orbit as we've seen it several times. Unfortunately, in this episode, in my POV episode and unfortunately in my Outer Wilds episode, just this recording session that I did on that day, none of the game audio recorded. So unfortunately we won't get to hear the sounds of the rocket taking off or what the Mun might sound like, but nonetheless we will continue on and we'll make sure that doesn't happen in the next time. Love the plume of the Tundra engine. Or that's not the Tundra engine, but the engine from the Tundra mod. Go ahead and cut off at 133 apoapsis. We're going to hit that and circularize. Like I said before, we're just going to kind of quickly go through the basics of orbit because I want to focus more on the actual flyby efforts, the remote tech that it takes to get it all automated and all that. We've seen here on the channel, we've seen plenty of launches to orbit, and here on KXP we've done it at least 3 times now. So I'm gonna push forward and keep going. I see you, man. You're in my sights, and I'm coming for you. And with that camera change, we are in orbit, and the little green plume tells us that we are almost out of fuel. So we go ahead and separate. And this Tundra is going to get flipped around, pointed retrograde, and brought home. However, we're not controlling this at the moment. We're still controlling the other rocket, so I am going to have to flip over and control this one. Our periapsis is only 110, so it's not going to be coming in naturally. So I'm going to go ahead and flip it retrograde and bring it on in, bring that apoapsis down. And hopefully we can do it quickly enough that we don't lose control of our other probe. And with that, our periapsis is 32. We still have plenty of fuel left, so hopefully if we can recover it. But it's about this point that I realized I don't have any parachutes on it, so it'll be up to stage recover to determine whether or not it had enough fuel to land, and if so, then we will recover those costs. But anyways, we are now in orbit. In fact, we could have actually just kept burning prograde and made it to the Mun. So even though we didn't do it in our test simulations in any capacity, we are just going to take the risk and go for it. We are going to burn prograde until our apoapsis crosses the sphere of influence of the Mun, and then we'll fine-tune the orbit from there. I'm going to go ahead and speed up the footage and editing and just get ourselves out there as quickly as possible. And just tightening in the orbit ever so slightly by tapping on the throttle ever so slightly, and we get ourselves to a nice low periapsis, giving us plenty of time in low space to do our science. We have 1200 meters per second of delta V remaining, and I'd like to make sure that we get ourselves home. And we're going to have to plug that into remote tech because I don't know if or when we're going to lose signal. And we don't want this probe just to be orbiting with a whole belly full of science and no way of getting it home until we learn how to rendezvous. And at that point, you know, who needs the science that it has? So we're going to go ahead and plot in our return trajectory right now. We're going to have a periapsis of about 44 kilometers, and our apoapsis won't be that high, so we should safely be able to do it. We plotted it into flight computer, and as you see there, I motion that we have 5 days and 3 hours before that maneuver. So what we're going to do now is we're going to find out what the time is when we enter the sphere of influence of the Mun. We want to be able to access our science action group from high space above the Mun. And as we see here, it's 1 day, 3 hours, and 56 minutes to get to that point. So I'm going to plot that into our flight computer here, 1D3H. 1D4H. Yeah, that'll do nicely. So So one day in 4H, we come out here and I press the 2 key on my keyboard, and as you see here, it fits in the action group number 2 as our next spot in approximately 1 day and 3 hours. Here, 1 day, 4 hours, 47 minutes to our periapsis. So we're going to just add the 47 minutes right there, and do need to put an M there, I will forget. But, oh wait, no, I guess we did type it. That was on, that must have been on one of my tests that I did that. Forgot about that. But anyways, so now we have action group number 3 to happen when we get to our periapsis. So now we are going to clear that and type in 5 days, 3 hours, and we're going to put that a little bit over our maneuver, because what we want to do is we want to arm our descent stage, and so that will close up the service bay doors, as well as stow our communication antenna, and collect all the science and arm our parachutes. So we're going to do that. So that's action group stage 4, and then we're going to stage our actual rocket stage and get rid of our lower part, and then hopefully we will be pointing retrograde upon reentry, and then our heat shield will take all the heat, and it'll be a successful mission. So now that I have remote tech plotted in, everything is going to be taken care of for me automatically, so there's nothing left to do but time warp our way forward and watch it all play out. Here we are crossing the sphere of influence of the Mun. And there we are. Now we are above the Mun. We can time warp forward a little bit. We got 33 minutes before our action group 2 toggles. We can see it here. We'll see the magnetometer boom extend. There we go. Action group 2 is done. Science in space high above the Mun. We can also see the Science Junior opened up. And once we hop back out of cinematic mode, we can collect all of that. We still have signal right now. We do have control. So technically we didn't need that to be plotted into flight computer. But however, when we go behind the Mun, there's a very good chance we're going to lose that control yet again. So for that, we did need the next action group plotted in. So at that point, we might as well plot in everything, right? We're going to time warp forward. Planet Shine takes over and shows us the dark side, because I wanted to have a little bit more clarity with things. I do have the gamma turned up a little too bright on this launch, and I will fix on the next one. It'll be a little less blown out. But as we pass easily and safely above the surface, our action group 3 extends, and all the science is collected from that. Well, the science is performed from that. It will be collected in action group 4 when we get ourselves ready to come home. So yeah, once again, nothing we can do here but time warp our way back across the Mun surface into the bright side and wait for our maneuver to come on home. Our solar panels are in full view of the sun, so I'm pretty happy. I don't think that we will lose battery life on this. Now our maneuver is done at the periapsis above Kerbin, so we can just straight up leave the sphere of influence of the Mun and head for that before we have to worry about flight tech's or remote tech's flight computer taking over. So here we are on the dark side of Kerbin, which is nice because this periapsis will become our apoapsis. which means that we will be landing in the day side. Pretty happy about that. And this maneuver only costs somewhere around 600 or so meters per second delta V out of our over 1,000, so we are definitely going to be able to come home. If we needed to make any kind of adjustments, we'll have plenty of delta V to do that. We will be burning up the rest of whatever we don't use up in the atmosphere, so that is technically a waste. We possibly could have put some parachutes on it, but you live and you learn. And certain parts of the rocket are okay to be expendable. I could have adjusted my return trajectory there and made us land a little bit closer to the KSC, and I think going on in the future I'm going to try to do that a little more. It was only in reviewing the footage I'm like, I could have done better with that, and so always trying to do better. Every time we have a new episode, main goal is to entertain you. Second goal is to do something fun. Third goal is to just do a little better each time. So there we go. Automatically it's staged, and we don't have any connection now. There's nothing we can do anymore, but as we see here, the data has been collected in the science collection unit, and as we can see, the disarm parachute button is there, meaning that all of our parachutes are indeed armed. So no matter where we land on Kerbin, if we have communication or not, hopefully it will handle its own return and safely come back to the surface. We're going to time warp our way forward. And unfortunately, it looks like we're pointed prograde, which I was very nervous about because that is where all of our parachutes are. And that would be awful to do all of that successfully and then burn up the way of landing. But thankfully, our front was heavy enough to point us forward, and our heat shield will be taking the brunt of it. And once again, we have Firefly added. This is the first episode of KXP, and it's also added in POV as well, and RP1 too, but it'll be a little bit before we can experience it there. But yes, the new Firefly re-entry mod, wonderful stuff. Yeah, once again, no control of this, no way of holding retrograde or spinning ourselves to dissipate some of the heat. Nothing we can do here, but watch it and wait. I like that the colors shift around as the craft shifts around. Super bright, burning a hole in my monitor right now, but absolutely worth it. And then with that, the colors start to fade, and we have passed through the thickest part of the atmosphere without exploding, which means that we only have one more step left to go before we can call this mission success. We can actually see the KSC area over there. It's behind a cloud at the moment, but it's nice to see that they won't have to travel very far to pick up the science. So apparently our drogue chutes either ripped off or burned up, but they had popped early. But thankfully this is a very lightweight craft, and our top parachute will be more than enough to bring it home. Also, we're landing in water, so no fears here. We're gonna go ahead and speed up the footage, get ourselves down to the surface, so that way we can just collect this, look at the science we have, unlock more science, and keep going. Good job, everybody. Let's bring it home. So with that, we earned a whopping 347 science, and we'll be able to do quite a bit with that. And we'll be able to utilize some of the things immediately as we go and pursue another milestone. And this time, we want to land on the Mun. I want to get that lander that we built. We tested it the way that it's built. Currently, it is capable of landing on the Mun, but I want us to be more than capable. I want us to excel in our Mun landing. So I'm coming back here to see what contracts I can pick up. In addition, make sure that we are always making money doing the things that we want to do. And if there's a way to make money, even if we have to change the mission slightly, I think we're going to do that. We are going to grab the science data from Space Around Kerbin. Even though we've gotten the science data, it'll be really easy to just run a thermometer scan and then transmit that and successfully complete that mission. So here we are spending our science. We got it in electrics, flight control. We are going to look at the space exploration soon, but we're not putting Kerbals down anywhere, so we don't need it. We're going to get miniaturization. That's going to help our probe. General construction has a fuel tank we want. We're going to need aviation for a future episode because I want to do some more plane stuff. And we spent a little bit too much money, and unfortunately we weren't able to unlock fuel ducts. I think if we didn't get that aviation, we probably could have, so that was a little bit misspent, but nonetheless, it's not going to be too big of a deal in this launch. So here I am. I'm going to update this rocket with better fuel tanks. It's not better fuel tanks. It's basically around the same amount. It's just fewer parts for what it is, so not too bad. I am going to add extra legs on here because I want it to be as stable as possible, and I realized why not spring for the extra spring. And I removed some of the cameras. We don't need it, but I am going to keep this Mun camera because I thought the way that it looked was pretty cool. We are going to have these communication dishes on there as well. But we do now have access to better quality communication dishes, so we will trade those out eventually. I don't know why I didn't just do it now, but nonetheless, we will trade it out eventually. We are going to put a little extra science on here. The seismographer can only be accessed while on the ground, so there was no point in putting it and trying to get space data in high and low space. But once we land on a biome, we'll be able to get some good science from that. So we put 2 on there. My goal with this probe is to land it in at least 2 different biomes. We need to land in 3 biomes. We don't need to do it in more than 1 probe. If it's possible to do it with only 1 probe, that's always ideal. But I'm going to try it for 2 with this one because it may be a little bit too difficult to get all 3 biomes and get it back home. I feel like we would need to make it a little bit beefier of a lander, and at that point we would need better landing gears and maybe a better probe and stuff. Definitely better batteries, and at that point we are pushing ourselves too far technologically speaking, but 2 out of the 3 ain't bad. So yeah, pretty standard launch vehicle. As you see here, the Tundra engine is doing us well, at least until we unlock some more things. And putting the launch clamps on it again, checking our staging, making sure everything is correct. And I had done many tests with this already. I did one last one and realized that having these better communication dishes will be a lifesaver in this mission. So should have just done that to begin with. We're also going to throw on some extra batteries. We didn't run out of electric charge during our simulation, but with how big this mission's going to be, how big of a milestone we're going to get from this, I don't want to take any chances on, losing battery. So once again, no game audio. Apologize for that, but we will be making up for it with hopefully a good soundtrack, new music, and my lovely narration. But anyways, like before, we are going to push forward into orbit and just kind of speed through some of the beginning stuff. I love the detail that the mod makers have put into this game, and the fact of the plume expands as you get into higher altitude. It's very realistic and it just makes this game, like, you know, in my opinion, just the best space simulator game to date, you know, in history, maybe. Not saying anything about the simulators that they got over there at NASA, though. I have no idea. I'm sure those might be 10 times the realism, but what you can do with this game, with real solar system, with Principia and all that stuff, Ferrum Aerospace Research, just super cool. But anyways, that was us almost getting to orbit, but not enough fuel in there, so we went ahead and jettisoned it and used our last little the last little bit of Delta V that we needed. We used our Lunar transfer stage engine. We used a little bit of that to get ourselves to orbit, but we still have 1400 Delta V, so that is going to be plenty to get ourselves into orbit around the Mun and landed. We went ahead and did that mission to transmit science from space around Kerbin. It was pretty easy. I kind of went really fast through it, but we just right-clicked on our thermometer, took a reading. We already had the reading, so it gave us literally no science. But when we transmitted it, that was good enough to solve the contract. We're letting remote tech handle all of our burns and all of our maneuvers, because it's just the safest way to be the most accurate. And with that, our periapsis came a little higher than we had planned, but we can just tap the engine to bring it down lower. And we plotted in our circularization burn for the Mun and went ahead and lined up with a maneuver and time warped forward. No need to waste any time right now, because we've made this trip before and we'll make it again. But here we are at the Mun surface, approaching the periapsis, approaching our maneuver, and getting ready to burn. And with that camera flip, we are now in orbit of the Mun, bringing down our apoapsis into a nice circularized orbit. So let's go ahead and time warp until we're on the light side of the Mun. We don't want to land in the darkness. And as you see here, we have no connection to the KC because we are behind the Mun. We don't have a communications network up and running, but as we crest over the horizon and we get ourselves a Kerbin rise, we will be able to gain signal once again, because those communication dishes that we upgraded to are really beefy. I think we can even reach Mintz with these communication dishes, but nonetheless, we now have control once again, so we're going to be able to land pretty safely and pretty easily. This was that camera that I told you about that I saved. I love the graininess of it, and as a first Mun landing experience, even though we're not POV at all, it's still worthwhile to slap a camera on there sometimes. Alright, so we have 484 meters Delta V, and we're actually above a crater right now. This is a named crater, I believe, the East Far Side Crater. No, this is just a regular Far Side Crater, excuse me. But, yeah, so we can plot in our landing burn pretty easily, because we're just going to be canceling out most of our horizontal velocity. And that uses about 100, it leaves us with about 100 meters per second Delta V left, and we're going to utilize some of that in our landing burn, so that way we can save all the fuel that we can in our probe tank for hopping around the Mun and for getting home. I'm going to go ahead and change my Planet Shine settings because I didn't like how blown out it was making the Mun. And 3 seconds left on our burn. I probably could have turned down the gimbal on that engine a little bit, had a little more control, but with that, let's go ahead and kill the flight computer control and just take a look at our trajectory. We've got, we're going 144 meters per second orbital, but we are going to want to point ourselves surface retrograde, not orbital retrograde. And unfortunately, I forget to change my nav ball over on that for a while, but it's not going to matter until we're really in the specifics of landing. I've got my landing info screen up there next to the orbit info, and that'll tell me my suicide burn countdown is 20 seconds from now. I'm going to try to kill a little bit more of our horizontal velocity while I have the ability to, but it's kind of throwing me around here, and I'm not really paying attention. But I use up that. I don't want to separate our lower stage too late, so I hit it. We only have 5 seconds left on our suicide burn countdown, but for some reason I decide to go into cinematic view, and now we are 3 seconds late on our suicide burn countdown as I begin to fire. And I don't think I need to tell you what's going to happen. Yep, that was an explosion, but oddly enough, it didn't explode everything. We had enough science in our bay, enough fuel in our tank below us that everything was saved from the science collection unit up. Unfortunately, I can't actually do any science or transmit anything from here. I have absolutely no control of this, but nonetheless, the probe is very happy to be alive and is going to just do a little dance. I'm not touching the controls whatsoever here. This is all on what it wants to do. But nonetheless, this was technically a successful landing. We didn't get the science. We certainly aren't going to be able to retrieve it. And this probe has nothing left to do except break dance for the rest of its life. But you know, that's not a bad life. Yeah, no connection. Nothing we can do. Oof. Yeah, not the best view at the camera. But anyways, in the next episode, I think we're going to try once again for a lunar landing. The only thing that we did wrong here is that I just simply wasn't paying attention. I decided, oh, hey, it'd be kind of cool to get a view of our landing thing instead of firing our engines when we needed to. So all I need to do is not do that in the next episode, and maybe we will have the Mun probe program in the bag. As you see here, we did indeed land in the far side crater. But anyways, that is where I'm going to leave today's episode. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're looking forward for more KXP. If you did, think about subscribing. Drop me a like, let me know your thoughts, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.